Hello and welcome to Unacademy IAS English, a one stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. Earlier today, Indian Armed Forces have carried out precision targeted strikes on terrorist camps located in Pakistan and Pakistan occupied Kashmir. These retaliatory strikes by India under Operation Sindoor are part of India's efforts to avenge the deadly Pahalgam attack that took place a couple of weeks ago. These strikes by India not only avenges the killing of civilians in the Pahalgam terror attack, but in a poetic way, India has delivered justice to the victims of this dastardly terror attack. In this session, I'm not going to waste your time by discussing just the details of the operation or by sensationalizing this sensitive topic. I'm sure you've already heard enough from our primetime news anchors, influencers, content creators, etc. The purpose of this session is to provide a crisp and critical analysis of the events that have occurred and focus on seven important points of analysis. So, if you can give me the next 30 minutes of your time, I will ensure that it would be a worthwhile opportunity for you to learn not just about Operation Sindoor, but focus on these specific seven points which could be relevant for our exams as well. So let's get started and let's focus on the targets that India chose to hit. Defense Ministry confirmed that India has hit nine terrorist camps located in PoK and in Pakistan. In the early hours of 7th of May, by around 1:45 a.m. in the morning, we started seeing chatter on social media platforms that large explosions were heard in Muzaffarabad, in Muridke, Bahawalpur, and within minutes, the Indian Army officially confirmed the retaliatory strikes carried out by India, which was also confirmed by the Defense Ministry of India as well. Then later in the morning, the government of India held a press briefing led by Ministry of External Affairs and the Ministry of Defense, where further details were provided regarding the targets and the method of execution of this attack and the intent of India behind carrying out these strikes against Pakistan. So, out of the nine terrorist camps that have been hit, four of these terror camps are located deep inside Pakistan, not in POK, but specifically in Pakistan. The most important hit has been against Markaz Subhanallah Mosque in Bahawalpur, which is considered to be the headquarters of Jaish-e-Mohammed. The founder of Jaish-e-Mohammed, Masood Azhar, who is one of India's most wanted terrorists, considers this to be his home base. In fact, according to reports, Masood Azhar has lost some of his family members in this attack, and he has not even expressed any regret. For those of you who don't know who's Masood Azhar was a Pakistani backed terrorist who was arrested at one point in the 1990s by Indian forces, who was in an Indian jail. But India was forced to release him from custody during the hijacking of IC 814 in 1999 in exchange for the lives of hostages during the Kandahar hijacking. So, after his release from Indian custody, Masood Azhar founded Jaish-e-Mohammed, which has carried out deadly attacks against India, including the parliament attacks, the Uri attacks, and the Pulwama attacks. So, Markaz Subhanallah is an infamous religious seminary that is home to a mosque and a madrasa, which is known as a hotspot for recruitment for Jaish-e-Mohammed. That's the reason why this was a critical target to be hit. Then Markaz Taiba terror camp at Muridke, which is considered as the headquarters of Lashkar-e-Toiba. This is another significant strike from India because the Pahalgam attack was claimed by the TRF, the Resistance Front, which is nothing but a shadow front, a proxy for the Lashkar. See, a few years ago, Pakistan came under tremendous international pressure and it was pressurized by the global community because of India's course of diplomatic efforts to not use terror groups like Lashkar-e-Toiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed against Indian civilian targets. Hence, Pakistan shifted its strategy to focus on military installations and defense targets. That's why over the last 10 years, we have seen repeated hits on military sites like Gurdaspur, Pathankot, Uri, Pulwama, etc. So, Pahalgam attack represents a new shift in strategy because after 26/11 attacks, Pahalgam is the next biggest strike on Indian civilians. So, what Pakistan has done, it has set up new entities such as TRF and the so called People Anti-Fascist Front, the PAAF, which are shadow organizations and proxies of Lashkar-e-Toiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed respectively. Now, if you pay close attention to the names of TRF and PAAF, these are English sounding names with an international outlook. They don't have an Islamic association or a jihadist association. This is a deliberate strategy by Pakistan to de-link these terror groups and to project them as local domestic terror groups focused on liberating Kashmir by fighting against India. But in reality, they are just proxies, fronts for Lashkar and Jaish, which have repeatedly been carrying out attacks in the last 4 to 5 years. So striking the headquarters of Lashkar and Jaish was absolutely critical, and that is what Indian armed forces have delivered. Apart from this, India has struck terror camps in Sialkot, where terrorists who carried out the Pathankot airbase attack were provided training and logistical support. Then terrorists who were involved in major attacks in Jammu and Kashmir, they were trained at these camps in Sialkot. So these specific locations have been hit by India based on real-time actionable intelligence. Without ground level intelligence, it's not possible to precisely identify these targets and to deliver these precision strikes. And it's not just in Pakistan that India has carried out these strikes. Five of the camps that were hit are located in PoK, in Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir. This is where Pakistan has set up staging areas where terrorists are trained, they're provided logistical support, and further pushed across the line of control to be infiltrated into India to carry out terror attacks against India. So some of these specific terror camps, staging areas, and launch pads have been hit in PoK, especially near Muzaffarabad. A terror camp, which was a training center for the Lashkar, has been targeted. Then also don't forget the terror camp that we spoke about in Muridke. That is where terrorists like Ajmal Kasab, David Coleman Headley, who were involved in the 2611 attacks, that's where they were trained. These specific camps where terrorists have carried out some of the biggest attacks against India have come from. Those sites have been hit. If you look at another terror camp in Muzaffarabad, which is a staging area for Jaish-e-Mohammed, where arms training and explosives jungle warfare training is provided. And this is done with the support of the Pakistani state actors, where Pakistani army, ISI, Pakistani special forces are involved in training the terrorists. They provide military grade training to them. Then terror camps in Kotli, where Fidain suicide bombers are trained, was hit by India, along with the Barnala camp in Bimber, where weapons handling and explosive training is provided for terrorists from various groups. In fact, even Hizbul Mujahideen makes use of some of these terror facilities. So essentially, Pakistan is a terror factory, a terror hub, a rogue nation, which has sheltered all these groups and provided all the required infrastructure and facilities for them. It was high time for India to decimate this infrastructure, and that is what Indian forces have delivered under Operation Sindoor. So, understanding the targets that we have chosen is very crucial, very important, because India's targets are legitimate. These are justifiable strikes by India. India did not start this war. India was instigated by Pakistan repeatedly. See, it's not just the Pahalgam attacks. Over the last 3 decades, India has been bleeding, not just in Kashmir, but across the country because of Pakistan sponsored terrorism. Since 5 decades, since 1970s, Pakistan has been trying to bleed India through 1,000 cuts, to exploit India's internal divisions, to trigger communal unrest in the country through such proxy terror attacks. This has been Pakistan's covert proxy warfare against India. So India has carefully chosen these targets. It's a very well calibrated, measured, focused approach by India. It's not just an impulsive strike. We are not just taking revenge. It's a well thought out strategy by the Indian government and the security establishment to select and pick out these targets and deliver precision strikes against them. In fact, the Defense Ministry, when it issued a statement early in the morning, there were few key words in the statement which actually stand out. The Defense Ministry said that these targets were carefully chosen. These were focused attacks, meaning precise attacks aimed only at terrorist infrastructure. Please don't forget, we have not hit any military targets. We have not directly hit the Pakistani army or its armed forces or the ISI and its infrastructure. More importantly, we have not targeted any civilian sites or civilian locations specifically. We have tried our best to minimize collateral damage. So India has ensured that these targets are legitimate, justifiable in front of the international community because these are the camps where terrorists were trained for repeated attacks against India. India has also said that the targets that we have chosen, the strikes that we have carried out, these are non escalatory in nature. What do you mean by this? It means India does not seek any further escalation. We are not seeking an all out war. We are not inviting a full fledged war with Pakistan. That is the last thing India wants. We are clearly sending out a message to the Pakistani deep state and the Pakistani establishment that these are strikes aimed at terrorist infrastructure and terror camps, not at the Pakistani government. It is not aimed at Pakistan's military targets. It's not aimed against Pakistani civilians. So India sees this as a justifiable strike, and we want Pakistan to accept this reality. And we hope that Pakistan doesn't escalate and climb the escalation ladder because that could spiral out of control, turning into a much wider and bigger conflict between two nuclear armed rivals. So, to tone down the tensions, India has clearly defined that these attacks were targeted, focused, measured, calibrated response from India, and it is of a non escalatory nature, which means we don't seek further escalation. So, we have now put the ball in Pakistan's court. India will not take up any immediate escalation as of now, but the ball is now in Pakistan's court. So, depending on how Pakistan reacts and responds to this, based on that, India will decide its future course of action. Now, coming to the method of execution, how did India execute this precise attack? According to initial reports that we have received, because there has not been any official confirmation in this regard from the government or the armed forces, we have received very little information from the government in this regard, obviously to protect the secrecy of the operations as well to an extent. But based on reports, social media accounts, open source intelligence, we can safely say that India has relied upon standoff weapons to deliver these strikes. Now, what do you mean by standoff weapons? Standoff weapons are basically fired from a certain distance, which means Indian forces, they need not cross into Pakistani airspace to deliver them. They need not breach into Pakistani territory to carry out these strikes. By remaining safely within Indian territory, within Indian airspace and jurisdiction, we could fire these long range weapons to strike targets deep inside Pakistan and PoK. So that in that way, India will ensure the safety of its troops and military assets while delivering precision strikes without breaching Pakistani sovereignty in that regard, without violating its airspace and territory. So India has made use of the scalp missiles and the hammer bombs, which are known for precision targeting. These are French manufactured weapons. The scalp is one of the most advanced cruise missile. We were all anticipating Indian forces to make use of BrahMos cruise missile, but it appears that most likely air strikes have been conducted by using fighter jets such as the Rafale, which is fitted with the Scalp cruise missile and the Hammer precision guided bombs. Since specific buildings and camps were hit in densely populated areas, it was important to use precision targeted weapons to minimize the collateral damage and ensure that civilians are not harmed. So, Hammer bombs are precision guided bombs fired from fighter jets such as the Rafale. So, both of them are of French origin. Scalp cruise missile as well is capable of precision strikes. So India has deployed these advanced weapon systems that are part of the Rafale fighter jet that we procured from France. Apart from this, India has also used loitering ammunition. Loitering ammunition has been used by India, which is nothing but armed drones, also called kamikaze drones, the suicide drones, which are unmanned aerial vehicles that can loiter over a target. They can glide and loiter over a target before they zero in on the target and strike the location. Usually, they carry a warhead or an explosive which detonates on impact, causing significant damage. Such kamikaze drones have been repeatedly used in various conflicts. For example, in Russia Ukraine war, both sides have been using such loitering ammunition and these armed UAVs on suicide missions. Essentially, kamikaze drones have been used. In the ongoing Gaza conflict as well, outfits like the Houthis have targeted Israel with kamikaze drones. So, India, probably for the first time, has made use of loitering ammunition in a combat situation, and we have used them to hit specific camps. So, with the help of these precision weapons, India has been able to carry out these effective strikes to hit 9 terror camps in Pakistan. Now, the next point I want to discuss is the symbolism that has been associated with the retaliatory option of India. This military operation has been aptly codenamed as Operation Sindoor. It is essentially a tribute to the victims of Pahalgam attack, a tribute to the women who were widowed during the Pahalgam attack as the terrorists brutally targeted their husbands, slaughtered them right in front of their family, shot them at point blank range in front of their wives and children. So, to pay tribute to those widows who lost their husbands, India has aptly codenamed this operation as Operation Sindoor. So, essentially, it's a tribute to the widow of Lieutenant Vinay Narwal, whose image went viral following the terror attack. It's a tribute to the couple from Karnataka. The wife lost her husband right in front of her eyes, in front of their child, when he was shot at point blank range. It's a tribute to the family of this IB officer who was brutally killed by the terrorists. It's a tribute to this Indian Air Force officer who was vacationing with his wife, who was shot and killed in front of his wife. So, this is a very symbolic name that India has chosen. But, however, I found something very disturbing online on social media platforms. Especially, there is a feminist narrative, so called feminist narrative, which is being pushed. See, don't get me wrong. I myself am a strong advocate of feminism, right? Protecting the rights of women, fighting for women empowerment, standing up against patriarchy, against social orthodoxy is something we all believe in. But there is a narrative which has been pushed on social media, which I found to be unnecessary. There is a narrative where some people, it's a very small section, they're arguing that by calling this Operation Sindoor, we are essentially demeaning women because essentially it subjugates women in a marital relationship. It places women at a lower pedestal compared to the husband. And that is what it symbolizes. While one can agree with the assessment, I think it's unnecessary to bring that argument into this situation because the only purpose here of codenaming this mission as Operation Sindoor is to pay tribute to those widows who lost their husbands, whose husbands were brutally slaughtered in front of their eyes. So, this is how India has avenged the attack. And let me know what you think about this unnecessary controversy which has been triggered, right? It's largely woke feminism. It's not real, authentic, organic feminism. As I said, don't get me wrong, I myself am a strong advocate of feminism, but bringing such debates in almost every issue doesn't make any sense. So let me know what you think on this in the comments. But there is a lot of symbolism attached with this attack. In fact, even at the press briefing, the symbolism was very evident. India has done phenomenally well at the press briefing as the whole global community was watching. This joint press briefing by Ministry of External Affairs and Ministry of Defense had a high symbolic value attached to it. I'm sure many of you would have seen the visuals. The briefing was headed by India's Foreign Secretary, Vikram Misri, from the MEA. And on both sides, he was flanked by two women officers from Indian Army, Indian Air Force, respectively. Wing Commander Vyomika Singh and Colonel Sofia Qureshi. This is a specific choice India has made. Again, to highlight that India's women are not weak, as women were singled out, left as eyewitnesses to report the brutality of these terrorists, and singled out on religious lines. This is a clear message from India to build that social harmony, communal unity in the country, and to send out a strong message that Indian women stand up and they are able to fight for themselves. They are able to defend not just themselves and their family, but the country as well. So I felt that this was a very strong symbolic message that India sent out through this press briefing. Now, coming to Pakistan's response, what can we expect from Pakistan and how Pakistan has reacted? Obviously, without a doubt, Pakistan has already categorized these attacks as an act of war and it has sworn to respond to these attacks, which means Pakistan is likely to retaliate and it might happen in the next 24 to 48 hours. But we have already seen repeated ceasefire violations along the line of control over the last 2 weeks since the Pahalgam attack. As the tensions rose between India and Pakistan, Pakistan has broken the ceasefire. The 2003 ceasefire agreement has been broken. Its commitments that was made in 2021 to uphold the ceasefire has been completely ignored. And Pakistani army and Pakistani rangers have been deliberately opening heavy firing against Indian positions. And after Operation Sindoor, we have received very concerning reports that along the LOC in Jammu and Kashmir, heavy artillery fire has been opened, and it has led to destruction of villages. It has hit civilian population, and more than 10 civilians have already been killed. Civilians in border villages are being evacuated, and they are taking shelter in underground bunkers. So this explains why India had called for civil defense drills today on the 7th of May to prepare the border population, especially in Rajasthan, Gujarat, Jammu and Kashmir, Punjab, and in other states closer to the border, to prepare them for any possible Pakistani retaliation. So going forward, we can expect Pakistan to come out with full force. Possibly, Pakistan could also consider some sort of missile strikes or drone strikes against India. Pakistan could also consider airstrikes through the Pakistani Air Force. It could even possibly consider a ground invasion into Indian territory at strategic locations. So anything is possible at this point. So India has to be fully prepared. And that's what Indian armed forces have been doing. They've been prepared for any eventuality. All the three armed forces have geared up for any possibility. Indian Air Force has been aggressively conducting combat air patrols. Air defense of India has been on the highest alert possible. Indian Navy is actively deployed in combat mission, in a combat mode, including our aircraft carrier INS Vikrant. So, Pakistani retaliation is largely expected. But now the question is, will Pakistan escalate? Will Pakistan climb this escalation ladder and widen the conflict? So that is a worst case nightmare scenario, because then the question is, how will India respond to it? As I said, India has done a very smart thing. Strategically, tactically, India has done a very smart thing by striking only terrorist targets which are legitimate, justifiable targets. Now, either Pakistan can accept the strikes, just let go of what has happened, maybe cooperate with India in investigating the terror attack and bringing the perpetrators to justice, which is unlikely to happen given that we all know what Pakistan thinks, especially the deep state, the army, ISI, right? Knowing their thinking, knowing their mindset, that is unlikely to happen. So Pakistan sees this as a humiliation, as a breach of its sovereignty, as an act of war. So, at least for symbolic reasons, Pakistan might choose to retaliate. The army appears weaker right now. The deep state appears weaker. So, to establish its own dominance within Pakistan and to try and protect its global image, Pakistan will definitely try to carry out some kind of incursions and some kind of retaliation. That is what India can expect. And we've already seen the major violation of ceasefire along the LOC, with accompanied with heavy artillery and as well as large scale firing at Indian positions and villages in the border areas. Other than this, Pakistan has resorted to one of its old dirty tactics, which is psychological warfare through information warfare. In any conflict, information warfare is a critical part of psychological warfare or psy war. Playing with psychology, trying to build a narrative to suit your interests. This is something Pakistan, especially the ISI, specializes in. Trying to spread fake news, trying to spread disinformation to discredit the Indian attacks and to discredit the Indian armed forces and the Indian government. So, ever since Operation Sindoor was carried out, we have seen several reports flooding social media, images, videos, claiming Pakistan has shot down 5 fighter jets, including Rafale, Sukhoi 30s, and others. While this is still disputed, there have been reports confirmed by Indian media as well that possible fighter jet crashes have been reported in Jammu and Kashmir sector and also in the Punjab sector. But we have not received any official word from the government of India. So we will stick to the stand taken by the government of India. At least as of now, at the moment I'm recording, as per official statements, India has not lost any fighter jets. But there's a lot of speculation, and especially on social media, and it has been linked with the information warfare Pakistan has been waging to try and change the narrative. This has been picked up by Western media as well. Platforms like CNN and others, they are reporting that Pakistan has shot down 5 Indian fighter jets. Please understand the PIB, Press Information Bureau, the Press Information Bureau, which runs a fact check unit, it has debunked all these claims by clearly pointing out that many of these images, videos, and visuals, they're all outdated. They have taken old, rehashed videos and they're trying to show it as a Indian fighter jet which has been shot. And what is even more ironic is that they've even circulated visuals from video games where fighter jets are shot down and they're trying to depict this as a real incident. And as well as several Indian cyber activists who counter fake news and disinformation, they have also debunked Pakistani claims by bringing out evidence to show that these are old videos or images from other parts of the world or from previous crashes that have happened in India or Pakistan. Or sometimes visuals have been taken from video games as well. So this is clearly a part of a propaganda that Pakistani deep state has been waging. We saw this after Pulwama attacks as well. When India carried out Balkot airstrikes, there was large scale disinformation in order to essentially undermine India's successful Balkot airstrikes and to project as if Pakistan had retaliated and shot down multiple Indian fighter jets. Right? So we have seen this happen repeatedly. It's nothing new, but India has done well to shut down the fake news and the disinformation. But however, there are conflicting reports regarding some of the fighter jets, but we have not received any official word from the government of India. So Pakistan's response is very clear. As I said, it is likely to retaliate, likely to respond. But what would be the scale of it? Would it just be symbolic, as we saw after Balkot airstrikes, just to prove a point, just to cater to its domestic audience? Or would it be a major escalation which could possibly breach the threshold and result in a much wider and a much larger conflict? Such a conflict would be fought under the shadow of nuclear weapons. Don't forget, Pakistan has tactical nukes. So this brings me to the next point. See, on the Indian side, I know Indians in general, right? We were all outraged by the tragic terror attack that took place. We all wanted this incident to be avenged. We wanted justice to be delivered. We wanted the perpetrators, the sponsors of terrorism to be brought to justice and held accountable. But however, there is a lot of chatter on Indian social media as well, among sections of Indians as well, that we should further scale up this conflict, push for a all-out war with Pakistan if necessary, decimate Pakistan altogether, or even push for reclaiming POK. Now, see, please understand, I have nothing against the approach that India has taken right now. We all agree, right, that India has taken the right decision to deliver calibrated hits against Pakistan. But pushing for an all out war or pushing for, let's say, a conflict over POK would be an unnecessary escalation for India, which is completely avoidable. Because, see, don't forget, this is a war that we don't want to be dragged into. Pakistan is a distraction, it's a rogue country, it's an irrational actor. India is an emerging global power. Our ambitions are different. We want to be a global power, a economic powerhouse. Because don't forget, wars have consequences. At the end of the day, civilians will pay the price on both the sides. Now, don't think I'm sympathizing with Pakistan or Pakistani civilians. I'm just citing the humanitarian angle. There is a significant human cost involved in any war. And don't forget the economic cost. Reports from organizations like Moody's has shown that Pakistan cannot sustain such a conflict. Pakistan's economy will crash and burn. It's already facing a crisis, and any sustained conflict, Pakistan's economy will be further destroyed. But understand this will also have an impact on India as well. Though it would be relatively less, India will also bear the economic brunt due to the war expenses, increased defense expenditure, and the significant human cost involved. It would be an unnecessary distraction for India, and paying for blood, war mongering, is not something a rational actor would do. And I expect all the viewers who are watching this video, most of you would be UPSC aspirants, right? You're expected to be rational actors, not irrational actors like Pakistan. So, what the Indian government has done, the strategic establishment has done, they've decided that such a course is not suited for India's interests. See, we can all sit and say what we want. We can say, let's take POK, let's go to war with Pakistan. It's easy to say that. But understand wars have consequences, and the Indian authorities, the government, the leadership, they are aware of these consequences. Thankfully, India has always had a sane, mature leadership, right? Government after government, we've had some sane leaders, and the strategic establishment has largely driven India in the right direction. A measured response, a calibrated response is much more effective and suited for India's interests. And also, don't forget, such a large conflict could easily breach the thresholds, and such a war could be fought under the nuclear umbrella. You never know when Pakistan could bring in tactical nukes into play. And this would be a worst case scenario. There would be tremendous international pressure that would build up against India as well to end such wars, right? So it doesn't make any sense to push for a much wider conflict or making these grand claims that India should take back POK, because the Indian establishment knows that it's not practical in the current circumstances. POK is an issue to be solved for a later date, not now, not through war. India is not ready for it. It's not that we are not capable. I'm not saying it's entirely impossible, but I'm just saying it's not practical. It's not prudent for India. That is why India has adopted a calibrated approach, an approach which mixes diplomatic steps with hard military options, along with covert options. These would be the steps for India. India has already initiated these steps, and this is something India would follow up upon. Through diplomacy, we'll continue our course of diplomacy against Pakistan to expose Pakistan's involvement with terrorism. We'll use multilateral platforms like United Nations, FATF, to bring sanctions on Pakistani terrorists, to ensure Pakistan is brought under economic sanctions as well for financing terrorism. Right? India has done that in the past by using the 1267 Sanctions Committee of UN Security Council, by getting Pakistan grey listed on FATF. So these options are available. We have appealed for global capitals to support India, to stand with India. And India, given the influence it has today, it does get significant support from most of the global powers to defend itself. Right? From Russia to Israel to other partners, from US to UAE, Saudi Arabia, they've all largely understood why India has to resort to these methods to target Pakistan. Correct? And also, please understand, these support that we are getting from global powers, it may not be forever. Maybe Russia, Israel will always stand with India, given our traditional all-weather ties. But countries like US, countries like UAE, Saudi Arabia, European powers, they may not tolerate a further escalation, and they would try to unnecessarily interfere as well, which is not what we want. So, with a mix of course of diplomacy to isolate Pakistan and pressurize Pakistan, we have to engage with hard military options, as we have seen today. So, this can't be a one-off operation. After Uri attack, we retaliated. Surgical strikes were done. After Pulwama, we retaliated with Balkot airstrikes. But these were one-off operations. The deterrent was not enough. In the past, after terror attacks, sometimes we have tried military mobilization. Like after Parliament attacks, India tried Operation Parakram, which was a failure. We have condemned the attacks. We have raised our voice and tried to bring international pressure. What we saw after 26/11 attacks. But even that has not worked completely. It has not put a stop to Pakistan-sponsored terrorism. We have tried the hard military option once, but these one-off strikes are not sufficient. They're not enough. They're not deterring Pakistan. So there is a need to re-establish that deterrence, to break the links between the state and non-state actors, to impose a cost on Pakistan. So that is why I'm saying we should sustain the military action. It can't just be a one-off operation. Operation Sindoor itself is unprecedented. Since 1971 war, we had never seen such a large-scale strike by India on Pakistan. But it would still be a one-off strike, and that alone is not enough. We should continue using the military option whenever there is actionable real-time intelligence regarding terror attacks being planned, terror launch pads and camps being set up. We should hit them decisively. So this should be a new era of India's counter-terrorism against Pakistan, where we will not hesitate to use the military option repeatedly against Pakistani soil. This is something India has to establish as a new paradigm, a new doctrine when it comes to tackling Pakistan-sponsored terrorism. Sustained military action against legitimate terror targets. Parallelly, covert operations. Never underestimate the power of covert operations. Covert proxy war gives you plausible deniability. You can plausibly deny your involvement. That's exactly what Pakistan has been doing. It will allow you to infiltrate terror groups, target the terror leadership, break their financing networks, target their logistics. And there is a precedent to this. India has done it in the past quite effectively. This reminds me of a very interesting portion of India-Pakistan relations, which many of you may not be aware of. This was back in 1987, when the Khalistan movement was at its peak, sponsored by Pakistan's ISI, where Khalistani groups had created significant trouble in Punjab and abroad, especially in Western countries, in US, Canada, and Europe. So Khalistan extremism was rising, posing a serious threat to India's sovereignty and territorial integrity. So at that point, Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, who could not take Pakistan's covert war anymore, authorized India's RAW, Research and Analysis Wing, India's external intelligence agency, to adopt a tit for tat approach and launch covert operations targeted at Pakistan. The idea was to impose a cost on Pakistan. So, as Rajiv Gandhi authorized RAW to hit back at Pakistan, RAW established two highly covert teams, CIT-J and CIT-X. Covert Intelligence Team J, Covert Intelligence Team X. These teams were set up with a mandate to hit the Khalistani networks, to take out the top leadership in Pakistan who are hiding, to hit their links with the ISI, and also carry out tit for tat attacks on Pakistani soil. So this reached such a peak because this was the Cold War era where there were no red lines which couldn't be crossed, where tit for tat conflict was quite common in that era. For every attack in Punjab, there would be counter attacks on Pakistani soil, from Karachi to Pindi to Islamabad. So day by day, the tensions were escalating, the covert war was escalating, and it reached a point where things were getting dangerous for both India and Pakistan. Essentially, it was a secret war fought between the intelligence agencies, ISI and RAW. But this approach of India, the covert option that was exercised by Rajiv Gandhi, imposed a significant cost on Pakistan. It pushed Pakistan on the back foot. And finally, it was a neutral country which mediated between the two. The King of Jordan was a very good friend of Rajiv Gandhi, who also had good ties with the Pakistani leadership, offered himself and his country as a neutral mediator, offering ISI and RAW to talk out and work out a truce. So the chiefs of ISI and RAW met in Amman, the capital of Jordan, and worked out a truce between them. And they agreed that ISI would scale down its support to the Khalistani extremist outfits, and in return, India would scale back its covert operations. In fact, it has been reported that ISI even shared some intelligence regarding few Khalistani extremists who had infiltrated into the Indian army and were planning attacks on India. Now, how do we know all of this? This has been well documented by one of India's legendary former intelligence officer, B. Raman, who retired as former additional secretary to RAW, who headed the counterterrorism division, a well-known IPS officer who's written a book called The Cowboys of RAW. So there he talks about India's covert action against Pakistan, how the Rajiv Gandhi government imposed a cost on Pakistan and pushed Pakistan back. This did help in bringing down Khalistan movement, and eventually it became a dormant movement by 1990s. So covert operations have always been effective. That's what any country worth its salt, any intelligence agency worth its salt would do. So this is something India should explore and expand as well, to target the terror leadership, their financing networks, to, if required, even carry out targeted assassinations and killings. These are preemptive strikes which can be done. That's what Israel's Mossad does. That's what US and its intelligence agencies have done. That is a model that India can follow as well, to ensure that we don't turn the hard military options into a full-fledged military conflict. So within the threshold, without ever reaching the nuclear threshold, we can ensure that we can use these options to keep Pakistan under constant pressure and to dismantle its terror industry. One last point from my side, one last assessment before we end this discussion. Operation Sindoor represents a paradigm shift in India's approach towards dealing with Pakistan-sponsored terrorism. Why? Because never ever we have carried out such large-scale strikes against Pakistan when there was no war going on. The last time such large-scale strikes happened was during 1965, 1971. Kargil was a limited conflict. So the strikes India carried out after Uri and Pulwama, they were just one-off strikes. Just one single surgical strike, one single airstrike was done. This is the first time multiple targets have been hit, 9 targets with 24 missiles, 24 strikes were carried out. According to Indian initial assessment, 70 deaths have been reported in Pakistan. Number of them could be terrorists. But what's unfortunate is that there are some civilians as well. As I said, there can be collateral damage, and India has expressed deep regret. We have said civilians are not our target. We are not aiming to target civilians. This is something which is very clear from the Indian side. Now, why does this represent a paradigm shift in India's approach? It is a paradigm shift not just because of the scale of the operation, but we are changing the doctrine as well. We are seeing a doctrinal pivot when it comes to countering terrorism that emanates from Pakistan, which is sponsored, nurtured by the Pakistani state. India is setting a new threshold. We are calling the bluff of Pakistan. See, previously, Pakistan would always hide itself by citing that India's response would result in a larger war, a larger conflict. A conventional war between two large countries is something the world was worried about. That would bring pressure on India, and India would take a step back. And Pakistan would always raise the nuclear threat. by saying that it would take the war to the nuclear level. It has deliberately developed tactical nuclear weapons to be used in the battlefield against Indian forces in case of a conventional war. But through Operation Sindoor and even through the surgical strikes we did in 2016 after Uri and the Balkot airstrikes, India has now set a new threshold. We have called the nuclear bluff of Pakistan, and we have also established a new form of deterrent. Without triggering a conventional war, we have established a new approach, a new military option which we can use, that is targeted precision strikes against terror camps. So, going forward, if at all there is such an attack, right, India can retaliate again in a larger manner, targeting terror infrastructure, terror facilities, and terror camps openly, right in front of the world, telling everyone that Pakistan is hosting these terrorists. This will limit Pakistan's options because it can't say that we have hit Pakistani civilians or cities. It can't give an excuse that we have hit Pakistani military infrastructure. So, this is a new paradigm which India is setting up, and the credit goes to the Modi government for that. The security establishment, the armed forces deserve all the credit for establishing this new doctrine, this new paradigm. We have established that without risking a full conventional war, without risking a possible nuclear fallout, we have an option, a military option to punish Pakistan, to deter Pakistan. So this reestablishes a strong deterrence. So next time Pakistan, before sponsoring such attacks, will think 10 times, 100 times. That is exactly what India wants. Now, don't think Operation Sindoor alone will eliminate terrorism. That is wishful thinking. That won't happen. That's why we need sustained action, diplomatic action, hard military action, and covert action to keep up the pressure on Pakistan and to dismantle the terror factories in Pakistan. Plus, India has ensured that we will not allow any third party involvement. India's stand is very clear. We want partners in this war. We don't want preachers. Foreign Minister Jaishankar has said, we don't want countries to preach us, to tell us what to do. Recently, countries like Malaysia, European powers, Turkey, they've all taken some neutral stand on the Pahalgam attack and India's right to retaliate, showing some kind of support and sympathy to Pakistan, which India doesn't appreciate. So India has clearly said we don't want preachers. We want someone who partners with India, who has a mutual interest with India, who stands with India against terrorism. This is not about religion. This is not about nationality. This is about humanity. That's a simple point India is making. So we'll not tolerate any third party interference and will not keep on proving to the world that Pakistan is sponsoring terrorism. That is very clear and evident. So going forward, this new doctrine will give India a bolder approach, a more ambitious approach to counter terrorism that emanates from Pakistan. That's why I feel this is a major milestone in India-Pakistan relations. It represents a paradigm shift. It represents the evolution of a new doctrine when it comes to targeting Pakistan without risking a conventional war, without risking a possible nuclear conflict. We have established a new precedent and we have shown that through such large-scale military strikes, we can hit the terror infrastructure and deter Pakistan. So this is what I wanted to discuss with you today. It has been a fruitful discussion, I hope. And let me know what you think. What is your view regarding Operation Sindoor? What do you think India should do? Should we continue the military strikes? Should we go for an all-out war? Is it practical to try and reclaim POK, or should we focus on the current approach, which is a more well calibrated and a well measured approach, which could yield better results for India in the long run? What do you think? Let me know in the comments. And if you like the discussion, press the like button, share the video with other aspirants as well. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. That is it. Thanks for watching.